Hey everyone, what is up? Today we're going to go over and get started building our own Instagram app. And today I'm going to go over some of the technologies we're going to use and why I picked those technologies to move forward and to base all of everything we're going to learn on those technologies. And first off, the main one we're going to use is React. Now, if you don't know what React is, it's a JavaScript library. It's similar to Angular or Vue or many of the other million of JavaScript libraries out there, Backbone, Ember. There's too many to count. There's always seems to be a new one every single year. The reason I picked React is because it's been around for a couple of years. It hasn't been around that long, but for the amount of time it's been around, it's pretty stable, and there's a ton of companies using it. So whether you want to learn more programming specifically to React, just to build this application is one thing, but it'll also help you if you want to upgrade on your job or get a new job or whatever you want to do, because there's tons and tons of companies using React at their current job, and I am actually one of them. I use both React, Ruby, Rails, and React Native. I use a little bit of everything, but I use mostly React for any new projects that I pick moving forward. And so just a little bit of background on React. It is just a JavaScript library opposed to a framework. A framework is more like Angular, or if you want to think of Ruby on Rails is a good framework, because Ruby on Rails, or Rails specifically, Ruby is the language that Rails uses. Rails is kind of a full-on framework, as in it provides the database layer for you, it provides the front-end views, and it kind of gives you a good framework of kind of copy and pasting code or getting started really quickly. Whereas React is just a library. There's no set amount of hard and fast standards. There is some best practices, but even that is changing quite a bit because it is just JavaScript. It's kind of just using, instead of jQuery to manipulate the DOM, you're using React to render it in a completely different way, but in kind of like the same end result. Just so much easier to code in, so much more fun to programming. And that's why I picked React. Also, React is super flexible, so you could use it in the web, you could use it on iOS, and you could use it on Android, and that's leveraging React Native for both iOS and Android. But the same concepts you could kind of transfer over to both web and to iOS and to Android. And so you could kind of learn once, write multiple times. It's not like Cordova or Ionic, where the idea was you write once and it works everywhere. In theory, that is awesome, but it doesn't always work that well. It always tends to be a lot buggier. Some of the endpoints don't connect very smoothly with Android and iOS, but React kind of streamlines that. They code specific endpoints to talk to native components, which may be in Android but not in iOS, or maybe in iOS and not Android. And so they know there's differences between the two, and they don't try to merge them to be just one big thing. One other thing we're going to use actually is Expo, which kind of shortens that gap of the differences between iOS and Android. And I'm not going to go too deep into that. We're going to learn it along the way. But from a higher level, that's the technology we're going to use to display the view to be able to leverage code on all three platforms, web, iOS, and Android. And for the database layer, we're going to use Firebase, which is a Google product. And then React is actually an open source Facebook product. So these huge tech companies are actually leveraging a lot of open source technologies to create their own products. And we're going to leverage those to basically create this for free. And so what Firebase is, it's just a NoSQL database. So if you ever used SQL before, that's a structured database where there's tables and everything's related. So it's a relational database. Whereas Firebase is a non-relational database. It's kind of just like a big JSON store. It's just a bunch of objects nested within each other. And then we get into the difference between just regular Firebase and Firestore. So Firestore kind of structures that JSON database, so it makes it a lot easier to query. And so we're going to use Firestore for our database layer. And then Firebase also uses authentication, so we're going to leverage the authentication within Firebase as well. And then we're also going to use Firebase for storage. So like I showed you in the example, we're able to take a photo and upload that to the cloud, and that cloud being Firebase storage. And so we're going to leverage two huge platforms for almost everything we need for this application, React Native and Firebase, and that's everything I used to build the app that I showed you yesterday. So I know that was a quick overview. There's a lot of information. Don't get discouraged. We're going to go step by step. I'm going to show you the code that's required to get all these things working, and I hope you join me along for the ride. See ya.